The moment Mason Fitzgerald grabbed her shirt and yanked hard enough to tear the fabric, everyone in that cafeteria went silent. 500 teenagers, and you could hear a pin drop. But Autumn Rivera didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at him with eyes that had seen too much, and whispered something that made the most feared boy in school step back. That January morning at Oakwood High started like any other. Cold Michigan wind rattling the windows, students shuffling through hallways half asleep, the smell of cafeteria pizza already making everyone queasy. But something was different that day, something electric in the air, like right before lightning strikes. Autumn Rivera sat alone at her usual table in the back corner, the one by the emergency exit. She always sat there, not because she was planning to run, but because she liked knowing she could. At 16, she'd learned that exits were more important than entrances. She was reading, as always, some beat-up paperback about ancient philosophy. The other kids thought she was weird for that. Who reads philosophy at lunch? But Autumn had her reasons. Every morning at 5 a.m., while her classmates were dreaming, she was at her father's gym, wrapping her hands, working the heavy bag, and every morning, her father would say the same thing, "Mija, the strongest fighter is the one who never has to fight." She'd been hearing those words for 4 years now, ever since the night they buried Diego. Mason Fitzgerald watched her from across the cafeteria, tall, golden-haired, with the kind of smile that made mothers trust him and fathers want him to date their daughters. Captain of the debate team, headed to Princeton, son of a federal judge. The kind of boy who'd never heard the word no in his 17 years of life. But Autumn had said no, multiple times. "Dude, just let it go," his friend Tyler muttered, following Mason's stare. "There's plenty of other girls." Mason's jaw tightened. "It's not about that." And it wasn't. Not really. See, what most people didn't know about Oakwood High was that beneath all the academic excellence and school spirit, there was something else. Something that had been passed down from senior class to senior class for over a decade. They called it the game. The rules were simple. Every girl in school had a point value. Freshmen were 25 points, sophomores 50, juniors 75, seniors 100. But there were bonuses. Virgins doubled your score. Girls who'd never dated anyone tripled it. And then there was the ultimate prize, the final boss list. Autumn Rivera sat at the top of that list. 1,000 points. The girl who'd never said yes to anyone. "She thinks she's better than everyone," Mason said, still staring. "Walking around like she's untouchable." The truth was, Autumn didn't think about anyone at all. She had bigger problems, like the fact that her mother worked 3 jobs to keep their apartment, like her little sister, Sophia, who was only 10 and already getting picked on for her second-hand clothes, like the empty chair at their dinner table that used to belong to Diego. But Mason didn't know any of that. All he knew was that, in 4 months, he'd graduate, and for the first time in the game's history. Someone might graduate without completing the final boss list. His legacy, tarnished. His name, forgotten. The previous week had been his opening move. Monday morning, Autumn found her locker filled with white roses. By lunch, the whole school was buzzing. Mason Fitzgerald, the golden boy, had finally picked his target. Some girls were jealous. Others were relieved it wasn't them. Autumn had dropped the roses in the trash without reading the card. Tuesday, he'd shown up at her first period with a guitar. stood right there in front of everyone and sang some song about brown eyes and forever. Mrs. Henderson had actually stopped teaching to watch. Her hand over her heart like this was the most romantic thing she'd ever seen. Autumn had put in her earbuds and continued reading. Wednesday. Things escalated. An Instagram account appeared overnight. Autumn Rivera deserves love. It had hundreds of followers within hours. Pictures of her walking to class, eating lunch, even one of her at the bus stop with Sophia. The captions were all about how beautiful she was, how mysterious, how Mason just wanted to show her she was special. She reported the account. It was back up within an hour. Thursday. The rumors started. Someone said they'd seen Autumn at a party making out with 3 different guys. Someone else said she was secretly dating a college student. Another person swore they'd caught her in the parking lot with a teacher. By lunch, 5 different versions of why Autumn Rivera was too good for Mason Fitzgerald were circulating. She still didn't react. But Friday was when Mason learned something that changed everything. Marcus Chen was what you'd call a floater, not popular enough to sit with the athletes, too socially awkward for the theater kids, too honest for student government. He survived high school by being useful, specifically by being the unofficial record keeper for the game. He kept everything on an encrypted app, names, points, proof, dating back 3 years. He wasn't proud of it, but it kept him safe. Better to be the scorekeeper than the ball. That Friday, Marcus made a mistake. He left his phone unlocked for 30 seconds while grabbing a textbook. Just 30 seconds. But Autumn Rivera had always been observant. She saw her name at the top of the screen, saw the number next to it, 1,000 points, and below that, a countdown timer. 91 days until graduation. For the first time all week. Something flashed across her face. Not anger, not fear. Something else. Something that made Marcus's hands shake when he realized what she'd seen. "Please," he whispered. "You don't understand. If I don't, I understand perfectly," Autumn said quietly. She slid his phone back across the desk. "Do what you need to do to survive." That's when Marcus realized Autumn Rivera wasn't ignoring the game because she didn't know about it. She'd known all along. Every girl in school knew. They just pretended not to. Because acknowledging it made it real. Made them players instead of people. But something else happened that Friday. Elena Volkov sent a message. Elena had graduated from Oakwood 3 years earlier. Valedictorian. Full ride to Northwestern. The kind of success story they put in the alumni newsletter. What they didn't put in the newsletter was why she'd spent her senior year in therapy. Why she'd changed her major from pre-med to social justice. Why she never came back for homecoming. The message was simple. "I heard about what's happening. We need to talk." Autumn met her at a Starbucks downtown, far from school. Elena looked different from her yearbook photos. Older, harder, like she'd aged 10 years in 3. "I was worth 750 points, Elena said without preamble. "Did you know the winner my year used the money to buy a car?" Autumn's coffee went cold as Elena talked. About how the game wasn't just about points. There was money involved. Buy-ins from players, bets from alumni. Thousands of dollars changing hands. And the girls, they were the commodity. "Madison Torres killed herself last year," Elena continued. "Sweet girl, wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. She was worth 500 points to the boy who got her drunk at a party and then posted the video as proof. Autumn's hand tightened around her cup. "I've been tracking it," Elena said, pulling out a folder. 50 schools across the state, maybe more. 10,000 victims over the past decade. And nobody does anything because boys will be boys. Right? She slid a paper across the table. Names, dates, amounts. A whole economy built on treating girls like achievements to unlock. "Why are you telling me this?" Autumn asked. "Because you're the first one who hasn't played along. Every other girl either gave in or transferred schools. But you're still here, still saying no." Elena leaned forward. "They're going to escalate. Mason Fitzgerald isn't used to losing." Autumn thought about Diego, about the night he went to that bar to defend a girl's honor, about how they found him in the alley, skull cracked, knuckles bloody, about how the other guy's lawyer said Diego threw the first punch. So it was self-defense. Her father had started teaching her Muay Thai the day after the funeral. Not to fight. He insisted, to understand, to know her own strength, to know when not to use it. "Let them escalate," Autumn said. Monday morning came too fast. Autumn knew something was different the moment she walked through the doors. The whispers were louder. The stares more bold. Someone had spray-painted Ice Queen on her locker. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Sophia's face when Autumn picked her up from elementary school that afternoon. "Why did those boys say you're a bad person?" Sophia asked, her 10-year-old eyes confused and hurt. "They said you think you're too good for everyone. They said you're mean." Someone had been talking to her little sister. Someone had crossed a line that shouldn't exist. That night, Autumn sat in her father's gym after hours. Just her and the heavy bag and the ghost of her brother. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," she said to the empty room. But Tuesday brought a new development. Photos started appearing on social media. Autumn at the gym at 5 a.m. Autumn's sweat-soaked sports bra. Autumn's focused face as she worked through combinations. The captions were vulgar, suggesting she was thirsty for attention or putting on a show. Someone had been watching her, following her, for who knows how long. Mason's friend group grew bolder. They'd show up at the gym, pretending to work out, making comments just loud enough for her to hear. They'd follow her home, always staying just far enough away to claim coincidence if confronted. "You know," Mason said one morning, appearing beside her locker, "this could all stop. Just one date. That's all I'm asking." Autumn looked at him, really looked, saw the desperation beneath the golden boy facade. The need to win that consumed everything else. "No," she said simply. His face flushed. "Do you have any idea who I am? What I could do for you?" "Do you have any idea who you are?" Autumn countered. "Without the game, without the points, without everyone telling you you're special." For a second, something flickered in Mason's eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition, but it was gone as fast as it appeared. "You're going to regret this," he said. Wednesday, Thursday. The harassment continued. Someone keyed her mother's car. Someone sent pizzas to their apartment at 2 a.m. Someone hacked Sophia's school email and sent messages to her classmates. But Autumn held steady. Every morning in the gym, every day at school, never reacting, never breaking. She was a stone in the river, letting it all flow around her. Marcus Chen watched it all with growing unease. He'd seen the game destroy girls before, but never like this. Never this systematic. Never this cruel. His conscience, long dormant, began to stir. Friday arrived with all the weight of an avalanche about to fall. The cafeteria was more crowded than usual. Word had spread that something was going to happen. The vultures were circling. Autumn sat at her usual table, book open, trying to find peace in ancient words. But she could feel it, the electricity in the air, the anticipation. The storm was here. Mason walked across the cafeteria like he owned it. Which, in a way, he did. His father donated the new science wing. His mother ran the PTA. His name was on plaques and trophies going back generations. He stopped at Autumn's table. The cafeteria held its breath. "Last chance," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "One kiss, right here, right now, and your name comes off the list. You'll be free. Sophia will be free. Everything goes back to normal." Autumn marked her page carefully, closed the book, looked up at him with those dark eyes that had seen too much. "Normal," she repeated. "You mean the normal where girls are worth points, where you buy and sell us like Pokemon cards, where Madison Torres thought killing herself was better than living with what was done to her." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Nobody talked about Madison. That was the rule. Mason's face went red. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Autumn stood slowly. "How much money have you made?" "Mason, how much is in the pot right now?" 10,020. "Shut up," he hissed. "How much did you bet you could break me by graduation?" The cafeteria was dead silent now. Even the lunch ladies had stopped serving. "I said, shut up!" Mason lunged forward, grabbing the front of Autumn's shirt with both hands. That's when time seemed to slow down. Have you ever had a moment where past and present collide, where you're simultaneously in two places at once, as Mason's hands twisted in her shirt? Autumn wasn't in the cafeteria anymore. She was 14, standing in a hospital corridor, watching her mother collapse when the doctor said Diego wasn't going to make it. She was holding Sophia's hand at the funeral, promising to always protect her. She was in her father's gym at dawn, his voice echoing, "The strongest fighter is the one who never has to fight." But sometimes, you don't get a choice. As Mason yanked hard enough to tear fabric, as the crowd gasped and phones came out to record, as 500 students waited to see the Ice Queen finally break, Autumn Rivera moved. The sound of tearing fabric echoed through the cafeteria like a gunshot. But it wasn't Autumn's shirt that made the noise. It was the sound of 10 years of silence finally ripping apart. Her body moved without conscious thought. 4 years of 5 a.m. training sessions crystallized into 3 seconds of pure instinct. She didn't strike. She redirected. Her left hand came up inside Mason's grip, rotating outward in a classic Muay Thai defense. Her right elbow stayed tucked, ready but restrained. The movement broke his hold so cleanly that Mason stumbled backward, his own momentum carrying him off balance. He hadn't expected resistance. In his world, girls didn't fight back. They cried. They submitted. They became points on a scoreboard. But Autumn Rivera wasn't playing his game. "Touch me again," she said, her voice steady as granite, "and I'll show you what my brother should have done." The cafeteria exploded. 500 phones came out, everyone desperate to capture what happened next. But Mason wasn't looking at the cameras. He was looking at Autumn's stance weight, balanced, hands open but ready, eyes calculating distance and angles. For the first time in his life, Mason Fitzgerald felt what his victims had felt: powerless. You think you're tough? His voice cracked, trying to salvage his pride. Training in Daddy's little gym, pretending you're some kind of warrior. He rushed forward again, this time with his fist cocked back. The crowd screamed. Teachers finally started pushing through the mob. But they were too far away. Too late. Autumn moved like water. She stepped offline, letting his punch sail past her ear. Her hand guided his arm further along its trajectory, using his own force against him. It was beautiful in its simplicity. No violence, just physics. Mason's momentum carried him past her, straight into the edge of a table. He went down hard, his designer jeans sliding on the waxed floor. The golden boy of Oakwood High sprawled like a discarded toy. That should have been the end of it, but something strange happened when Mason hit the ground. He started shaking, not from anger or embarrassment. This was different. His whole body convulsed, eyes rolling back, breath coming in desperate gasps. Students backed away, thinking he was having a seizure. Someone screamed for the nurse. But Autumn recognized what she was seeing. She'd seen it before. In the kids who came to her father's gym. The ones who flinched at raised voices. The ones who couldn't handle sudden movements. Trauma. She dropped to her knees beside him, ignoring the gasps from the crowd. "Mason, look at me. You're safe. You're at school. Breathe." His eyes found hers, wild with panic, and in that moment, she saw past the bully to the broken boy beneath. She used to fight back," he whispered, so quiet only Autumn could hear. "My mom, when Dad hit her, she'd try to fight back, and it just made him madder." The pieces clicked together in Autumn's mind. The need for control, the hatred of rejection, the rage when girls said no. Mason wasn't just playing a game, he was reenacting his childhood trauma, trying to rewrite an ending where the woman didn't get hurt for defending herself. "But you're not your father," Autumn said softly, "and I'm not your mother. We can break the cycle." The crowd watched in stunned silence as the girl who'd just defended herself now comforted her attacker. Phones kept recording, but the narrative had shifted. This wasn't a fight video anymore. It was something else, something harder to categorify. Principal Morrison finally broke through the crowd, followed by security. "Everyone back to class now." But nobody moved. They couldn't look away from the scene unfolding on the cafeteria floor. Mason's breathing slowly steadied. The panic receded, leaving him exposed and raw. I can't stop. The game. It's everything. Without it, I'm nothing." "You're 17 years old," Autumn said. "You're not nothing. You're just lost." Security helped Mason to his feet, leading him toward the nurse's office. But before they got far, he turned back. "The money," he said hoarsely. $27,000. That's how much is in the pot. That's what you're worth to them." The number hit the crowd like cold water. $27,000. The price of a girl's dignity in their hallways. Autumn stood slowly, brushing dust from her torn shirt. She looked around the cafeteria, meeting the eyes of her classmates, the boys who played the game, the girls who pretended not to know, the teachers who looked the other way. "Madison Torres was worth 500 points, she said, her voice carrying to every corner. "She killed herself because she thought that's all she'd ever be worth. A number, a score, a story for boys to tell in locker rooms." The cafeteria doors burst open. Elena Volkov walked in, flanked by two women in dark suits. FBI badges gleamed at their hips. "Actually, Elena said. Madison Torres was worth everything. And today, we're going to prove it. The next hours passed in a blur. FBI agents interviewed students. Phones were confiscated. The encrypted app Marcus Chen had guarded so carefully became evidence in a federal investigation. But Marcus had made a choice that morning. Before any of this happened, he'd sent the entire database to Elena. 3 years of names, scores, payments, a roadmap of exploitation across 50 schools. I couldn't sleep anymore, he told the agents. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. The girls who trusted the wrong person, who thought they were on dates, not transactions. The investigation revealed depths nobody had imagined. Alumni betting rings, teachers taking cuts to look the other way. A whole ecosystem of predation dressed up as teenage tradition. Coach Daniels broke down when they showed him his son's name on the player list. I knew, he sobbed. God help me. I knew, and I did nothing. By evening, the story had gone national. Not because of the fight, that 3-second redirect that barely qualified as contact, but because of what happened after. The image of Autumn Rivera kneeling beside Mason Fitzgerald, offering comfort to someone who'd tormented her, became the photo that defined the story. Why, a reporter asked her later, why help him after everything he did? Autumn thought about Diego, about that night in the alley, about how violence only created more violence, an endless cycle of hurt. Because strength isn't about who you can hurt, she said. It's about who you can heal, even when they don't deserve it, especially then. Mason's story came out in pieces. His father, the respected federal judge, had been removed from the bench 5 years earlier for domestic violence. His mother had cycled through relationships with men who treated her the same way. Mason had learned that women were things to control, and when they resisted, you broke them. I became my father, he said in a televised interview months later. I told myself I was different, but I was doing the same thing, using power to hurt people who couldn't fight back. He entered intensive therapy, sold his car to contribute to a fund for the game's victims, started speaking at schools about toxic masculinity and the lies boys tell themselves about what makes them men. Autumn Rivera saved my life, he said, not by fighting me, by refusing to become me. The investigation expanded. School after school fell under scrutiny. The game, it turned out, had variants everywhere. Different names, same purpose, turn girls into points, turn dating into hunting, turn rejection into rage. But something else emerged from the ruins. Support groups formed. Girls who had been silent started talking. Boys who'd been pressured to play started refusing. The culture, slowly, began to shift. Elena Volkov became a full-time advocate. She traveled to schools, telling Madison's story, showing Madison's picture, a smiling girl who wanted to teach kindergarten, who loved butterflies, who mattered. Every girl on those lists had a name, Elena would say, a dream, a future. They were never just points. Marcus Chen faced legal consequences for his role in the game, but the judge, noting his cooperation and genuine remorse, sentenced him to community service. He spent it teaching encryption and cybersecurity to domestic violence shelters, helping them protect their clients from digital stalking. I used my skills to hurt people, he said. Now I use them to protect the same people I hurt. Principal Morrison resigned. The school board launched a full review of policies that had allowed the game to flourish for a decade. Teachers underwent mandatory training on recognizing signs of systematic harassment. But the biggest change happened in a small gym on the south side of town. Autumn started teaching. Not Muay Thai. Exactly. Something different. She called it Defensive Heart, a program that taught physical techniques alongside emotional intelligence. Your body is your last line of defense, she'd tell her students. Your mind is your first. And your heart tells you when to use neither. Girls came first. Survivors of the game, looking for ways to feel safe again, then their mothers. Then, surprisingly, their brothers. "I don't want to be like those guys," one 15-year-old boy said. "But I don't know how else to be." So Autumn taught them how to handle rejection with grace, how to see girls as people, not achievements, how to find worth in themselves that didn't depend on conquering others. Mason Fitzgerald was one of her students. He came every week, working through combinations in the back row, never speaking, just learning, rewriting his muscle memory from violence to restraint. One day, after 6 months, he approached her after class. "I dream about that day," he said, "the cafeteria, but in my dreams, I don't grab you. I just ask why you kept saying no." Autumn considered her response. "Because you didn't see me. You saw a prize, 1,000 points. A way to prove something that didn't need proving." "What did I need to prove?" "Nothing," she said. "That's what you never understood. You were already enough. The game just convinced you otherwise." They stood in silence for a moment, the ghost of Diego somehow present in the empty gym. "Your brother," Mason said finally. "Tell me about him." So she did. About Diego the protector, Diego the hothead, Diego who died defending a stranger's honor in a bar fight that didn't need to happen. He was 18, Autumn said, though he was invincible. Thought his anger was righteousness. He died thinking he was a hero. Wasn't he? He was my brother. That was enough. He didn't need to be anything else. Mason nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. For everything." "I know," Autumn said. That's why you're here." The first anniversary of the cafeteria incident arrived with unexpected media attention. News crews wanted to film at the school, to do retrospectives on how the game had fallen. But Autumn wasn't at school that day. She was at the cemetery, sitting beside Diego's headstone with Sophia. "He would have been proud of you," Sophia said. She was 11 now, taller, more confident. The bullying had stopped when the game fell. Amazing how interconnected cruelty could be. "Maybe," Autumn said, "or maybe he would have wanted me to hit Mason harder." Sophia laughed. "Probably. Diego wasn't big on restraint." "No," Autumn agreed. "But he would have learned. We all do. Eventually." Elena arrived with flowers, then Marcus, then, to everyone's surprise, Mason, one by one. People gathered, not for cameras or publicity, but for something simpler: connection. Madison would have been 19 today, Elena said, placing roses by another stone. She wanted to be a teacher. They stood in comfortable silence, survivors of different battles in the same war. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "The game is gone. But what replaces it?" Autumn thought about her morning classes, full of kids learning that strength had nothing to do with domination. That power meant the ability to choose not to use it. "Something better," she said. "It has to be." 2 years passed. Autumn graduated quietly, turning down interview requests and book deals. She had no interest in profiting from pain hers or anyone else's. Mason went to therapy instead of Princeton, started community college, volunteered at domestic violence shelters, learned to see his mother as a survivor, not a victim. She fought back, he told his therapist. All those years, I thought she was weak for staying, but she was protecting us, fighting in ways I couldn't see. The game tried to resurface at other schools. It always would. There would always be boys who needed to prove their worth through conquest. Girls who were taught their value lay in being conquered. But now, there was resistance. Students who'd heard Autumn's story, who knew about Madison Torres, who understood that some games nobody wins. We called them out immediately. One sophomore girl explained to a reporter, the second someone starts talking about points or scores or lists, we shut it down. The FBI expanded their task force. 50 schools became 500. The investigation revealed similar games in colleges, workplaces, online communities. The scope was staggering, but so was the response. Survivors connected across state lines, support networks formed, laws changed. What had started in one cafeteria rippled outward like waves. Autumn kept teaching. Her classes grew from a dozen students to hundreds. She brought in guest instructors, survivors who'd found their own ways to heal. Mason became one of those instructors. I teach what I call emotional Aikido, he explained to new students, how to redirect your own toxic impulses, how to recognize when you're about to cause harm, how to choose differently. It wasn't easy. Some days, the old patterns reasserted themselves, the need to control, to win, to dominate. But that's what the work was: daily choice to be better than your worst impulses. Recovery isn't a destination, Mason would say. It's a practice, every day. You practice being the person you want to be instead of the person trauma made you. The third anniversary arrived with less fanfare. The media had moved on to other scandals. But in Oakwood, the changes held. The cafeteria where it all happened had been redesigned, where Autumn's corner table once sat. There was now a memorial. Not to the game's victims, they deserved privacy, but to the idea that everyone deserved dignity. A simple plaque, in this place, we choose to see each other as human. Autumn stood before it one quiet afternoon, accompanied by an unexpected visitor. "Mom," Mason said to the woman beside him, "this is Autumn Rivera." Mrs. Fitzgerald was smaller than Autumn had imagined, thin, nervous, with eyes that had seen too much. But there was strength there, too. Survivor's strength. "Thank you," she said simply, "for helping my son see what I couldn't show him. That fighting back doesn't always mean throwing punches." They talked for an hour. About trauma and healing. About cycles and how to break them. About boys who grow up watching their mothers suffer and decide either to become protectors or perpetrators. Mason's father was abused too, Mrs. Fitzgerald said. His father before him. Back and back and back. Someone had to stop it. "Someone did," Autumn said, looking at Mason. "He did." As they parted ways. Mrs. Fitzgerald hugged her, whispered something only Autumn heard. "Your brother would be proud. Not because you fought, because you knew when to stop." The gym stayed busy. New students every week. Word spreading through channels both official and underground. Kids who needed to learn defense. Adults who needed to unlearn aggression. Everyone searching for that balance between strength and restraint. One evening, Autumn's father watched her teach. 70 years old now, moving slower but still sharp, still preaching the gospel of controlled power. "You did it, mija," he said afterward. "You found the way." "Diego helped," she said, "by showing me what not to do. Her father nodded. He was a good boy. Just young, he thought every fight needed winning. When her some fights need preventing, Autumn said. Some need redirecting. And some need understanding, her father finished. The hardest lesson of all. Sophia joined them, now 13, and taking classes herself. Not because she was scared, but because she wasn't. She'd seen what quiet strength could do. "Are you ever angry?" Sophia asked. "About everything that happened." Autumn considered. "Angry, numb, sad, sometimes. For Madison. For all the girls who thought they were worthless. For all the boys who thought hurting others made them worthy. But not angry. Anger is easy," Autumn said. "It feels powerful, but it's lazy power. Real strength is harder. It's choosing to understand instead of condemn, to heal instead of hurt, to teach instead of punish." Even Mason, especially Mason, he could have become his father. Instead, he's becoming himself. That takes more courage than any fight. The story could end here, with lessons learned and trauma healed, with the bad guys reformed and the good guys validated. But life isn't that neat. Some of the game's players never changed, moved to new schools, started new lists. Some victims never recovered, carried their point values like scars that wouldn't fade. But in one gym in Michigan, something different grew. A place where strength meant restraint, where power meant choice, where the hardest battles were fought within yourself. Mason Fitzgerald went on to become a counselor specializing in toxic masculinity. He never forgot the day a girl showed him mercy when he deserved none. Marcus Chen became a digital rights advocate, using his skills to protect the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. Elena Volkov's foundation grew nationwide, turning Madison's tragedy into thousands of lives saved. And Autumn Rivera, she kept teaching, every morning at 5 a.m., wrapping her hands not for violence, but for discipline, showing broken people how to rebuild themselves, proving that the strongest fighter is the one who never has to fight. The last scene takes place in that gym. A new student, 15 years old, angry at the world. He's heard about the game, thinks it sounds cool, thinks girls are things to be won. Autumn pairs him with Mason for partner drills. "Why should I listen to you?" the kid sneers at Mason. "I heard about you, how some girl punked you in front of everyone." Mason smiles. "It's not bitter or sad, just understanding." "She didn't punk me," he says. "She saved me from becoming someone I'd hate, someone who confused fear with respect, someone who thought breaking others would fix what was broken in me." The kid doesn't get it. Not yet. But he will. They all do. Eventually. In this gym where Diego's ghost teaches through his sister's hands, where every punch not thrown is a victory, where strength is measured not in what you can destroy, but in what you can preserve. "Again," Autumn calls out, "and remember, the point isn't to win. It's to understand why you thought you needed to." The morning sun streams through the windows, lighting up the dust motes like tiny angels. Somewhere, Madison Torres is more than points. Somewhere, broken boys are learning to be whole men. Somewhere, the cycle breaks. And in a gym in Michigan, a girl who refused to play the game teaches others how to win without fighting. Because that's what real strength looks like. Not the fist that strikes, but the hand that helps someone up. Not the voice that threatens, but the one that says, "You're worth more than this." Not the fighter who never loses, but the one who knows when not to fight at all. The strongest fighter is the one who never has to fight. Diego finally understands. 5 years later, a young woman walked into Autumn's gym. She was 19, Madison Torres's age when she died. But this girl was alive, angry, carrying a crumpled piece of paper. "My boyfriend," she said, voice shaking. "He started a list, points for girls at our college, said it was just for fun." Autumn recognized the look, the betrayal, the realization that someone you trusted saw you as a score. "What's your name?" "Grace. Grace Chen." Autumn paused. "Marcus's sister." The girl nodded. "He told me to find you, said you'd understand." They sat on the worn benches where so many had sat before, where broken people came to become whole, where the cycle tried to continue and met its match. "It never really ends, does it?" Grace asked. "The game, it just changes names." "No," Autumn said. "But neither do we. Every time it tries to come back. We're here, stronger, smarter, ready." She showed Grace the wall of photos, students who'd passed through these doors, not victims anymore, survivors, teachers, defenders. "Your brother saved a lot of people when he released that database," Autumn said, "including himself." "He still has nightmares," Grace admitted, "about all the girls he helped hurt." "Good," Autumn said, and Grace looked shocked. "Not good that he suffers. Good that he remembers. That's how we prevent it from happening again." That night, Autumn got a call, Mason's voice, excited, "Turn on the news." "We did it," Mason said. "Ooh, we actually did it." "No," Autumn corrected. "Madison did it. We just made sure her story got heard." Later, alone in the gym, Autumn talked to her ghosts. "We won. Diego. Not with fists, with patience, with teaching, with refusing to become what tried to break us." The empty gym didn't answer. But somewhere, in the silence, she felt her brother's approval. Finally understanding Mang that real strength was never about the punch you could throw. It was about the hand you chose to extend instead.